I call to order the Tuesday, October 10, 2017 legislative session of the Swarthmore Borough Council. All members are present except Lauren McKinney, who has to be excused this evening. She won't be with us. The mayor is here. So we're here and ready to go. But first, we would welcome public comment on any subject if anybody wishes to address us. If so, please come forward, state your name and your street address, and we would be happy to hear you.
Hi everyone, I'm Tony Denninger, 507 Riverview Road in Swarthmore. I'm afraid I'm here again to talk about the conflict between Riverview Road residents and the National Realty Corporation. I have just two specific things I want to ask the council, just for your discussion in private, but I want to put some questions into your mind so that you can discuss it at your own discretion among yourselves. I want to start with some background on the situation as I understand it. I think it's clear that the business plan of the NRC is to develop the north end of Riverview Road as commercial properties. We know that because some 15 years ago, they waged an expensive, thorough, legal battle to rezone 545 Riverview as a commercial property. Now, the council of that time, of the 2000s, fought that at great expense to the borough. And as I understand it, that went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the NRC lost. After that, as I understand it, the Swarthmore Centennial Foundation made a generous offer to acquire that property since it couldn't be used for the commercial purposes that the NRC designed. But the NRC declined. And they had purchased the adjacent property, 541 Riverview. Now, what happened a year ago this month is they started to raise all the protections for 541 Riverview that had been in place to preserve it as a residential property. That's exactly what they did in the 2000 era up to 545. They took down all the trees, all the foliage. My neighbors who've been there for decades tell me it was a lovely home, and it had protection from Baltimore Pike in the form of the greenery and trees that all of us in Swarthmore love so much. The NRC took it down and then made the legal case that they couldn't possibly rent it as a residential property because no one would live there. Now, what began a year ago at 541 is exactly the same thing. They are making their legal case that no one would live in those properties. That's how developers get cheap commercial property, which, as I understand, is quite precious in Delaware County. They have run down the value of the 541 property by cutting down trees. I was there the day they were cutting down 60-foot trees. They started in mid-October and had another run at it on Friday 2 weeks later.
We know the history. You don't have to repeat the history to us.
I appreciate that. What I want to ask the borough, given that in my view it's clear to me that the NRC has been laying its legal case for its next approach to the courts to get those properties rezoned. I just want to be sure that this council and future councils are preparing the legal case. I'm not saying take NRC to court. I'm saying get ready because they, I believe, will be taking the borough to court. And this is what I want to ask the borough. Number one, that 1985 agreement, which was, the council of the 80s understood that by granting this zoning to allow Springfield Square South to develop as a shopping center next to Riverview, that the properties at Riverview Road would be very attractive for expansion for the commercial development. The 1985 agreement was designed by the council at that time in their best efforts to protect those residential properties. Now, the NRC has eliminated 2 residential properties from the borough. That 1985 agreement serves to protect those properties because if there's a 60-foot buffer between the residential properties on Riverview Road and Springfield Square South, those properties are not as valuable. They have eliminated the 60-foot buffer in several places. What I'd ask is that, Bob Scott's letter of January to the NRC, which began the communication with the NRC on this, was completely loyal to the 1985 agreement. There's a line in that letter, the developer has engaged in a pattern of behavior that is in violation of its obligations under the 1985 agreement. That is pretty much the sum of the matter. They have engaged in that. The last year they have been engaged in that same battle. You could send that same letter to the NRC every month. What I'm asking is please do not sell out the 1985 agreement and say, well, they're doing the best they can. Yes, they've cut down dozens and dozens of trees over the years, but they just planted 6 or 8. So let's say they came close enough. So I'm not saying, I don't want to take the council's time with this. But no one on Riverview Road broke an agreement with the borough. It was the NRC that broke an agreement with the borough. The residents that, I'm sorry, have taken so much of your time this year have come because we are trying to make sure that the borough's agreement is honored by the NRC. Please do not tell them because they planted 6 or 8 trees that, okay, thanks, you're now in compliance. They know they're not in compliance. That's been their aim. And I do think it would be fine for the borough to send a letter every month just to preserve the validity of the 1985 contract. The second thing I want to ask is that I'm hoping that a member of the council could serve as a sponsor to the group of Riverview residents who are so concerned with this issue. And by that I mean, I don't think that the NRC is preparing its legal case in public view for us to follow. And I don't think that the borough and the residents on Riverview Road should have to open up our discussions to the party that may be our adversary in the courts in due course. So I would just ask that the borough consider privately whether one member would be willing to serve as a liaison to the group of residents on Riverview Road. We would take less of the full council's time in public comment, and we would eagerly appreciate guidance from the council. We will work for the borough. Many of us have invested a great deal of time and money to preserve this 1985 agreement. We think that our interests are perfectly in line with other citizens of the borough. So please consider possibly having a council member serve as liaison for us, if not in this council, in the incoming council next year. And thank you again for your time, and for those who are moving on from the council after this year. We very much appreciate the time and expertise you've donated to the borough over the years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. Thank you. Any other public comment tonight? Yes, Mr. Lee?
Good evening, Council. Rick Lee, President of the Fire Company. Just wanted to remind you all that this is Fire Prevention Week, or 1 week during the year when the focus is upon us. We've been doing a lot of recruitment, both at the college and at the local schools. We're performing fire prevention at all the schools this week, and we remind all the residents in town to please make sure you check your smoke detectors, pull them down, take a look at them. If there's no date code on them, replace them. You can now purchase smoke detectors with a 10-year lithium-ion battery, so you'll never have to hear that chirp. Smoke detectors are only good for 10 years, and so it will actually give you a chirp after 10 years and say it's time to replace me. So we urge all residents to take the time I did it myself this weekend. Pull them down, take a look. I replaced 2 of mine, no date codes. We also urge you to, in common areas in your hallways, to change them out to a smoke and carbon monoxide combination detector, which is safe. And those people that keep their bedroom doors closed at night, make sure you have a smoke detector in your bedroom as well. And that can just be a smoke detector, not a combination. So we urge all residents to continue to think about Fire Prevention Week, plan your escapes with your kids, and we hope everyone has a fire-safe year. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick, and thanks for that advice to us and to our neighbors. It's been staggering to watch the pictures coming out of the Napa Valley in California, the rate at which entire communities are destroyed in hours such that people can't even find enough time to pack up something in a station wagon and get out. It's, fire is an extraordinary thing when it gets moving. Thank you for that. We have had circulated to us for consideration the minutes of our meeting of September 11, 2017 and October 2nd, 2017. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as circulated?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I have one question. Jane, the cost of the truck went from, is 50,000?
It's 45.
Okay.
Yeah.
We
What
had-
did I say in the
It's
minute?
50 in the minutes.
Yeah. And
I didn't know if we got any
I only
quote.
put 50 because that's what was in the memo, wasn't it? Or had I changed the memo to 45?
45. Can we amend the?
Sure.
All right, then we're good.
I thought I was being consistent.
Any other question about the minutes? Subject to that correction, is all those in favor of approving the minutes as circulated, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Opposed? The minutes are approved as corrected. Thank you. Is anybody prepared to make a report on behalf of the Environment Committee tonight in Lauren's absence?
I'll cover a little bit when
Thank
I
you.
do public works. Or I do it right.
No, whatever. Whenever you want to.
We'll do it after public.
Okay.
Roll it all together.
Okay, thank you. Finance Committee.
Yes, thank you. First of all, we will be meeting this month, Monday, October 23rd at 7:30 a.m. here to just primarily and probably completely to discuss the budget. Unless there's other things that come up between now and then, that's plans to be the meeting topic. In terms of the, hopefully everyone's got the package in front of them or had a chance to look at it. In terms of the month of September, particularly when you compare this year to last year, it looks like revenues are behind schedule, but it's really more a function that they were significantly ahead of schedule last year as opposed to being behind this year. We're pretty much on track as expected. Last year we had particularly high building permits and real estate transfer taxes, amongst other things, so that was a bit inflated. In terms of expenditures, basically as expected, so we're currently at the end of September, the cash balance in the general fund was $1,955,467. Does anybody have any questions about the revenues and expenditures through the month of September?
Okay.
All right, I'm going to move on then to the wire transfers. I'd like to make a motion to approve wire transfers totaling $2,539.25 for September 2017.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Schmucky seconds. Any question about that? All those in favor of approving those wire transfers, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Opposed? The transfers are approved.
Okay, I'd like to move on to the open invoices and just make a very, very quick comment that they're particularly high this month. This is when we're paying our MMO and our healthcare and a few other extra things that we typically would, they're just one time, sewer bill, they're one time in nature throughout the year. So the number is quite big, but that's the reason why. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to look through the individual bills. But I'd like to make a motion to approve bills to pay for the month totaling $835,690.82.
Second? Mr. Schmucky seconds. Any questions about any item on the list? No questions. All those in favor of payment of those bills, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? No. Payment is approved.
That's all I have.
Thank you very much. General government. Ross?
We will be meeting 100 our usual third Monday, which is October 16th at 7:30 in the evening, and we will be discussing the budget request for next year. That's all I have to report.
Okay, thank you. Planning and zoning. Mary?
At last week's meeting, I believe a fellow council member said they wanted to make some sort of a motion concerning the co-op sign. That's where we left off.
Yes. So, we discussed a little bit, would the motion need to be technical and prepared in some way, but in the absence of seeing any technical motion, I'll just verbally say I'd like to move to, wait a minute, the consideration was for an exception to the ordinance such that they can move their sign down and it'll be above the lintel of the top window above the front door. That's not very technical.
No, but you're not approving their petition. You're moving us to whether or not council wants to take a position on it.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Okay.
Now that we have that straight. So the issue is that I understand there to be a motion by Mr. Schmucke that council advise the zoning hearing board that council would support the request by the co-op to move its sign in a manner described in its application to zoning hearing board.
Correct.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Murphy, is there any discussion on that issue?
I will just say that I'm the one who's making the motion, and I'm making it because it seems like a de minimis change. It relates to the unique nature of the glass on their thing. We don't normally step in. We don't want to do this a lot to make a comment to the zoning board because they do their business. But it seems to me relatively obvious and that it might be helpful for us to express that in some way. That's my whole
Okay. Any other question or comment? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? The motion is passed. And Mary, I take it you will make council's position in that regard known to the zoning hearing.
I will, and that'll be on Tuesday, October 24th at 7:30 p.m. here.
Okay, thank you.
And our committee, Planning and Zoning Committee, will be meeting on Thursday, October 26th.
Okay, anything else tonight?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Public safety.
Thank you, David. On the agenda is consideration of the revisions to the civil service regulations for the borough of Swarthmore. First of all, I want to thank Police Chief Brian Craig and Mary Walk and the other members of the Civil Service Commission for a lot of work they did to bring the regulations up to date. You may have noticed, because Jane circulated a clean copy and a red line showing the changes to the existing regulations, that there are in fact a lot of changes. In particular, a lot of additions. Some of them are more material than others. I'm certainly not, I don't intend to go through all of them, but I thought very quickly I would hit just a couple of the highlights and then call on Mary and Brian to add whatever you think should be added. But I note, for example, that under section 2, which describes the commission and the organization of the commission, that the new regulations state that the commission shall meet and organize on the first Monday of January of each even-numbered year, which means this coming January 2018 will be an organizational meeting. And it also is that particular provision, which by the way is 2.3A, also established, and that's on page, what I'm going to read from is on page 7 of the red line version, establishes a quorum. 3 members of the commission shall constitute a quorum, and no action of the commission shall be valid unless it has the concurrence of at least 2 members. And then there are other provisions in here as well that deal with the appointment of alternate members to step in case one of the appointed members is unable to function at that time. I also note that under section 2.7, which is on page 8 of the red line version, there's a statement that, and this is new, it's an addition to the existing provision, the borough shall also provide the services of a solicitor for the commission to be appointed by the commission and paid by the borough. The borough shall have the authority to place a reasonable limit on the amount allowed each year for the services of the commission solicitor. I think we talked about that briefly. Mary, do you want to comment on that?
I don't think that we're required or expected to have a full-time solicitor the way we have for borough council. I think it could be something on an as-needed basis if we wanted the solicitor for the commission to take a look at something. But it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to have somebody in mind if we needed to do that, but it's not a solicitor on retainer, no.
Okay.
And in my experience, the solicitor is needed when there's a hearing. If there's a disciplinary action that were appealed to the civil service.
Or an appeal, essentially.
That's where a solicitor would be necessary. And for its regular testing function, it's really not needed.
I mean, under the regs, it is conceivable that someone who is denied an appointment could appeal that decision. There would have to be hearing under those circumstances as well.
Is it required that that solicitor be somebody other than the borough solicitor?
It is.
Should be, yeah.
Should be. There's a conflict because often
Okay.
because it's an appeal of a borough action.
But the regulation itself does not so state.
It's silent. It's silent on that. Yeah.
Okay. All right, fine.
Then there are some provisions that haven't changed, but I wanted to just briefly mention them anyway because maybe not everyone is aware. Section 2.12, for example, that's on page 9 of the red line. The commission shall make an annual report to the borough council containing a brief summary of its work during the year and a full accounting for any expenditures of public monies. The annual report shall be available for public inspection. I presume that means when there's something to report, because we certainly have not gotten, to my knowledge, reports annually from the commission, but
They don't usually meet.
because there's nothing to report.
Nothing to be done, yes.
Right, okay. The other thing I wanted to just remind people of is, and these are not changes, but section 3.5, general qualifications for all applicants for positions on the police force. Remember, we talked about potentially changing the educational requirement. We didn't. That is still in place. Another thing I wanted to mention was having to do with the appointments of new officers. That's in section 5.3, old 5.2, page 22 of the red line. Just reminding people that it states that Borough Council may make an appointment only from one of the 3 names certified with reference to the merits and fitness of the candidates. And then there's a statement about veterans preference. But again, just reminding folks that Borough Council actually will have to make the appointment when the time comes, and there will be an examination given, Brian, I believe it's January 6th, right? 2018, that's what we're shooting for. So at some point, this will be the next council, will have the privilege of appointing someone from the list. I also wanted to mention there is a similar kind of, it's not at all the same, but a similar kind of provision in section 5.5, that's page 23 of the red line, about the appointment of the chief of police. And again, it's a similar provision, but a little bit different. And that's, again, you can see many changes, mostly in the way of additions, but that's all I wanted to mention. Mary, do you have any points you'd like to bring up?
I don't. I think we all took a really good look at it, and the solicitor took a look at it, so.
I would just like to point out that the Civil Service Commission also needs to approve these. So I don't know if one has to come before the other.
It's kind of not clear. My preference is to have the Civil Service Commission approve it first, because I think that the Borough Code kind of implies that they recommend upper change and then the council approves it.
Well, that would make sense, but you've taken a look
I
at it,
have,
Bob,
I
and
thought it
you're
was a- I thought it
satisfied.
was a very good job, and I appreciate the chief doing his line at the time. It's a lot of work.
So that means, if you can talk to the chair, you should advertise a meeting, who has to do that,
Yeah.
because you don't have.
Yeah,
to
you have,
make
to-
it
it has to be an
An advertised meeting.
What's the lead time? Is it 30 days notice of a meeting?
24 hours, which is really you need to place an ad the day before it runs, and then the meeting has to be the day following the day the ad runs. So
Okay.
it's really 48 hours.
So we may be able to act on this in November.
Yeah.
Right, if you can get your group together,
Mhm.
and put something, it can go in the Swarthmore tomorrow,
Okay.
a little notice if you can.
All right.
Thanks, Dave.
And Brian, did you have anything you wanted to add, or?
My main concern is with the announcement and the application. We've set a date with the college as far as the,
I think we're good to go with that. I don't have,
What's the
Bob,
date?
you, January 6th?
Oh, yeah, we should be done by then.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, but have you had a chance to look
Oh,
at
yeah,
it?
yeah, I looked at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so now you can just give them both versions if you want, we can talk about that.
Right.
Okay,
Right,
great,
okay.
thank you.
Great, great, okay. And that's all I have, David, except that the Public Safety Committee will meet a week from today
Okay.
at 7:30 in this room.
You want to give previews of coming attractions? Do you know?
Well, actually, we'll be talking, no surprise, about budget requests, in particular the Swarthmore Fire and Protective Association's request. And we also will be discussing some other matters as well. And in that regard, I know I'll just bring it up now instead of under other business. It's not on the agenda, but I would move that we hold a very brief executive session after today's meeting to discuss some pending legal and contractual matters
Okay.
involving the borough.
Sure. We'll do that.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Public Works, Parks and Recreation. Mr. Murphy?
Thank you, David. As mentioned earlier, I'm too close, too far. Good. I'll talk a little bit about the environment. And I guess in particular, Little Crumb Creek, we have ongoing improvements. We keep kind of doing little things at Little Crumb Creek. So the pagoda, is that the right expression?
Gazebo.
Gazebo.
That's good.
Which is, I think, from around
That'd be
the
fun.
50s era.
Yeah.
Needs
No.
a roof. Older?
No, it's not that old, it's 70,
70s?
70s.
Early 70s.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
should have gotten more than 30 years out of
And
it.
actually, the person who put that roof up called and asked me to go look at how it was doing because they thought it would be forever. Whatever material they used, they thought it would be forever. And they were very
Yeah,
disappointed.
well, there's stainless steel which doesn't rust, and there's steel which rusts, so we.
And there was
if
some
we-
other-
if
That
allowed,
Court, that was Court 10,
Supposed
to run.
in a healthy way.
but not through,
Yeah.
but not through.
So, not to belabor the point, but we're meeting here on the 26th in this room at 8:30 a.m. We're going to talk about the roof, which we have a couple estimates on. And I think as frequently DAC manages to haul some volunteers in as well.
Okay.
So if we're going to do the roof, we'll probably kind of also patch up the rest of it. The other two items on the agenda, we have SRA's budget request, and we have Ross had wanted to put crosswalks on the agenda just as a discussion as we eventually put in a couple of different flashing crossings in town and maybe mixing in some education along with that, so both the drivers and the pedestrians kind of know the rules of the road when it comes to those things. Essentially, don't walk out in traffic, even though you have a flashing light. But yeah, that's what we'll be talking about. And that is all I have.
I personally today walked through the roundabout and people stopped.
I think the
Well,
awareness
maybe
of-
because I looked sternly at them.
I will tell you, eye contact makes a big difference. Step off the curb, make eye contact, and
Right.
people go, oh, they want to cross. So that's
Yes, okay.
it's certainly a joint effort.
That's good. Where do we stand on our paving program?
Oh, I should brag about it. We're
Please
finished.
do.
Actually, they look great. I managed to use 3 of them on my commute here. I don't think that was intentional, but yeah, they're all.
Do you need help on the direct way between your house and here?
No, well, we kind of ramble around a little bit. Yeah, so the 6 streets are all finished. I don't know of any issues. And the work looks really sharp, so I know it's a hassle for that week, but we're done.
Well, good. Okay.
So put in your request for next year for the many people watching.
Okay, is that it?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor? Tim?
Thank you, David. It was a very successful 80th anniversary for the co-op. It was a beautiful night in October, and I think there was a lot of good things said about the co-op, and there's obviously a lot of buzz about it right now, trying to do everything we can to make sure it's viable and strong. The only other thing I have is the SRA Oktoberfest is coming up on the 28th of October. That's always a good event, and in this case, the proceeds that they make is going to support the basketball courts behind SRS. Good stuff.
Okay. In that regard, for my own curiosity, knowing that the co-op purports to be in difficult financial straits, I did a search on Quicken at home on payee co-op, and if my household is any judge, I have no idea in the world why they're in difficult financial shape. Okay, Borough Manager.
We have a couple of things on there. Somebody could make a motion to authorize for that street tree removal contract.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any question about that? Everybody understands?
It's our same bidder again, right?
Well, no, we really do try.
I didn't. You like I'm not persecuting.
No, we do. We call. Everything. They just.
I'm to the point that I'm always happy that there's at least one bidder.
Yeah.
Might
Might be,
more.
yeah, it could be worse.
But okay.
Yeah.
Any other question? All those in favor of authorizing advertising for bids for 2018 street tree removal, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Any opposed? It's approved.
And then saying the resolution authorizing the signatures on the master casting agreement, and that's the one where PennDOT, we have agreed upon prices with PennDOT for them to raise the manholes when they're paving their streets in the borough, which doesn't seem to be happening on a regular basis, but maybe it will.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Kerry moves.
I'll second.
Mr. Murphy seconds. It's really quite interesting that there's that long an agreement having to do with raising manhole coverage. But it's
Master agreement.
it's master. Master casting.
So short.
I thought it was about fly fishing myself. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Opposed? It's approved.
The only other thing I'd like to mention is that we are moving along in a replacement of streetlights with LED lights. And by the end of the year, we should be at about 100 lights, which is 20% of our total amount. It doesn't seem like that much, but as you start to walk around, you can look up. Most of them are the smaller ones. They're 25 watts, and we also put some brighter ones in the intersections on Chester Road. They were already brighter, but we've replaced those. And actually, we're getting more bang for our buck on those because they were such a high wattage that were there before. So if you're strolling, now that you're done looking at the paving, just do take a stroll. And many thanks to the police department who on a regular basis go out and find the lights that are out for us, which is a much harder job than it sounds like. And that's all I have.
Okay. Solicitor Bob?
Council probably already knows, but the neighbors of the Headstrong property have appealed the decision of the Court of Common Pleas to the Commonwealth Court. I have no information beyond the fact that they have appealed. No briefing schedule yet or anything other than.
And it's my understanding of the procedure that appeal having been taken, the Common Pleas judge now has to write an opinion.
That's correct.
Okay, which will be interesting to read when it is forthcoming.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other business tonight? Okay, we will now go into executive session. We thank you all for coming tonight.